My name is Emma Caldwell. I was 31 years old, a contracts attorney at a mid-sized firm in Chicago, when my mother sent me the text that ended our relationship. It was a Thursday in late March. I remember because I'd just finished a deposition that ran 2 hours long, and I was sitting in my car in the parking garage on Wacker Drive, eating a protein bar that tasted like cardboard. My phone buzzed. Mom. The preview showed enough to make my stomach drop before I even opened it. Honey, don't be mad. I signed for a little loan in your name for Sophie's wedding. You have such good credit and we'll all pay it back eventually. It's only $80K, haha. Family helps family. I read it 3 times. The protein bar was still in my mouth. I couldn't swallow it. $80,000. In my name. Without my permission. For my sister's wedding. I stared at that little kissing face emoji until it stopped looking like an emoji and just looked like a small yellow scream. I think the thing that broke something in me wasn't the number. I'd seen bigger numbers cross my desk every week. It was the word haha, that casual little throwaway, the way you'd type it after telling someone you forgot to grab milk on the way home. $80,000 of debt in my name. Haha. I didn't reply. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes with the engine off, watching the concrete sweat under the fluorescent lights. A guy 2 spots down was arguing with someone on the phone about a parking ticket. I could hear every word he said. I felt very far away from my own body. Then I started the car and drove back to the office. Let me back up, because the comments section of my life would absolutely roast me for this if it were a video. Why would you let your mother near your credit? Why would you trust her? What were the red flags? The honest answer is that I didn't let her near my credit. She didn't have permission. She had my social security number because she'd used it to file my taxes when I was 17, and never stopped having it written down on an index card in her kitchen drawer. She had my date of birth because she gave birth to me. She had my old address because I lived there until I was 22. That's all you need, by the way. People think identity theft requires something dramatic. It doesn't. It requires a Tuesday afternoon and a mother who decided your credit score belonged to the family. As for the red flags, they were there. Of course they were there. My mother, Linda, had spent my entire adult life treating my career as a kind of communal lottery win. When I made partner track at 28, she told her church group that the family had finally caught a break. When I bought my condo in Lincoln Park, she asked when she'd be moving in. When I sent her $1,000 for her birthday 2 years ago, she wrote back asking if I could round it up because Sophie needs new tires. My sister Sophie is 28, and she has never in her life worked a job for more than 7 months. She does something on Instagram that she calls content, which seems to involve filming herself drinking iced coffee in different parking lots. Her fiancé Brandon sells supplements through what is legally not a pyramid scheme. They were getting married at a vineyard in Galena with 160 guests and a string quartet during cocktail hour. I had been told repeatedly that I was expected to be a bridesmaid and that the dress would cost $400, which I would be paying for myself because, of course, I had said no to financially supporting the wedding 3 times. Once in November when my mother mentioned that the venue deposit was more than we thought. Once in January when Sophie cried at brunch and said her dream was slipping away. Once in February when my father, Mitchell, who normally stays out of these conversations because he has the spine of a wet napkin, asked me over the phone if I could loan them some money for the catering. I had said no, clearly, 3 times. So my mother, faced with the brick wall of her daughter's actual boundaries, walked around it and signed my name to a personal loan from a bank I'd never heard of in Schaumburg, Illinois. Back at the office, I sat down at my desk and I did 3 things in this order. I did not call my mother. I did not call my sister. I did not cry. First, I pulled my credit report. All 3 bureaus. There it was, freshly minted, dated 9 days earlier. Personal loan, $80,000. Origination at a regional bank. The hit to my score was already there, almost 40 points. I had been planning to refinance my condo in May. That was over. Second, I went into Linda's text and I screenshotted it. Then I screenshotted the text thread above it, going back 2 months, so the context was preserved. I airdropped everything to my laptop and put it in a folder I named Caldwell and saved it to 3 separate locations including a cloud drive my mother definitely did not know about. Third, I walked across the hall to the office of a woman named Janelle Park, who is a litigator and the only person at my firm I trust with anything that matters. I closed her door behind me. I said, my mother committed identity theft against me for $80,000. I need to know what I'm doing in the next 24 hours so I don't accidentally screw up my own case. Janelle put her pen down. She said, okay, sit. She walked me through it. File an FTC identity theft report tonight before anyone could claim I'd known and consented. File a police report tomorrow morning in person at the district where the loan was originated. Freeze all 3 credit bureaus immediately. Do not, under any circumstances, contact my mother or sister in writing about the debt. Do not discuss it as a family. Do not let anyone record me saying something gentle that could later be twisted into consent. And Emma, she said, looking at me with the flat, calm look she uses on opposing counsel, if you want this to land, you have to mean it. Half measures and family fraud cases just create chaos and no consequences. Decide tonight whether you're prosecuting your mother or not. If you are, you go all the way. I went home. I didn't cook. I sat on my couch with my laptop and I filed the FTC report at 9:47 p.m. I froze my credit at all 3 bureaus. I sent one single text to my mother, which Janelle had dictated to me word for word. I received your message. I will not be participating in this. We will speak through other channels. She wrote back within 90 seconds with 3 messages in a row. Honey, what does that mean? Don't be dramatic. It's just family money, it'll all even out. I turned my phone face down on the coffee table and I went to bed. The next morning at 7:30, I was at the police station in Schaumburg with a folder of documentation. The officer who took my report was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain. She looked at the loan paperwork. She looked at my driver's license. She looked at the text from my mother. She said, "Ma'am, this is one of the cleaner cases I've seen. You did everything right." I almost cried then. Not at the kindness exactly. At the word case. It was a case. It was no longer a family problem. It was a case. By Monday, 3 things had happened. My police report had been forwarded to the bank's fraud department, which had begun their own investigation. The bank had placed an immediate hold on the loan balance, pending verification of the alleged borrower's signature. And my mother had figured out that something was wrong, because she tried to make a withdrawal from her own checking account and noticed the bank had flagged her name in their system. She called me 11 times on Monday. I sent every call to voicemail. She left 3 messages. The first was confused. The second was angry. The third was crying. "Emma, baby, please call me back. I think something is wrong with my bank. They're saying there's some kind of investigation I don't understand. Please call me. You're scaring me." I forwarded all 3 voicemails to Janelle. I did not call. On Tuesday, Sophie texted me. The thread between us had been dead for about 6 weeks. The last message in it was her asking if I'd thought any more about chipping in for the photographer. "What did you do?" she wrote. "Mom is freaking out. The bank is asking her questions. We need that money for the venue final payment." I didn't reply. "Emma, I'm serious. The wedding is in 6 weeks. If something happens with the loan, we lose the deposit." I didn't reply. "You always do this. You make everything about you. It's my wedding. Brandon's family is already asking questions." I almost replied to that one. I had a whole paragraph drafted in my head about how my $80,000 credit hit was, in fact, about me. But Janelle's voice was in my head. Do not engage in writing. I deleted the draft. I blocked Sophie's number. On Wednesday, my father called from his work phone, which I hadn't blocked. I picked up because I was curious what version of him would be on the line. Sometimes Mitchell is the cowed apologist. Sometimes he's the angry patriarch. I wanted to see what flavor we were getting today. We got angry patriarch. Emma, you need to drop whatever this is right now. Your mother is a wreck. The bank called her. They said the word fraud. Emma. Fraud. Do you have any idea what that does to a 64-year-old woman? I was in a conference room. I had my notes app open. I was typing as he talked because I knew Janelle would want a record. Dad, I said, she committed fraud. The word the bank used is correct. It was a loan. Between family. You're being ridiculous. It was a loan she took out in my name without my consent. That is the legal definition of identity theft. There is no family exception to that law. You can fix this with one phone call. You can tell them it was a misunderstanding. We will pay it back. We will figure it out. Sophie's wedding is in 5.5 weeks. I took a breath. Dad, listen to me very carefully. I did not call the bank. I called the police. The investigation is no longer mine to call off. It belongs to the state of Illinois now. Even if I wanted to drop it, I cannot. There was a long silence. Then he said, "You called the police on your own mother." I did. He hung up. I sat in the conference room for a minute, then I went and made a cup of tea in the office kitchen, and I noticed my hands were not shaking, and I felt something I hadn't felt in maybe a decade. I felt clean. The next 2 weeks were the part of the story that, in a movie, would be a montage. The bank's fraud investigation moved fast because the documentation was clean. My signature on the loan papers was clearly not my signature. A handwriting analyst confirmed it within 4 business days, which is the legal equivalent of overnight shipping. The bank rescinded the loan and demanded the disbursed funds back, with interest, from the only person who had touched them. My mother. Who had already, of course, spent $48,000 of it on the wedding. The venue deposit was non-refundable. The catering had taken a 50% payment. The dress had been altered. The string quartet had been booked. None of it was coming back. The bank did not care about Sophie's wedding. The bank wanted its money. This is where the story took a turn I did not plan for, but did not stop either. Brandon's family is from Lake Forest. His father is a partner at a wealth management firm. His mother is on the board of 2 charities. They had been told throughout the engagement that Sophie's family was comfortable. They had been told that Sophie's older sister was a successful attorney who was contributing meaningfully to the wedding. When Brandon's mother called Linda to confirm a detail about the rehearsal dinner, 10 days after my father's phone call to me, Linda was apparently already 3 glasses of wine into the afternoon and not at her sharpest. She said something. I don't know exactly what, but within 48 hours, Brandon's family had a quiet conversation with Brandon, and Brandon had a not quiet conversation with Sophie, and the engagement was off. I found out from a Facebook post Sophie had written a long weeping caption about how her own sister had destroyed her happiness out of jealousy. She had not named me. She didn't have to. Half my extended family commented within the hour. The comments were brutal. I had not expected that part. An aunt I hadn't spoken to in 6 years wrote, "Emma always thought she was better than us." A cousin wrote, "Some people forget where they came from." Linda's church friends who had known me since I was in pigtails wrote things like praying for this family with the little folded hands emoji that I now understood was the passive-aggressive cousin of the kissing face. I did not respond. Janelle had told me not to, and I didn't. But I did do one thing. I wrote a single post on my own Facebook page, which I had not used in 3 years. It was 4 sentences. My mother took out an $80,000 personal loan in my name without my consent or knowledge. I reported it to the police and the FTC. I have not spoken to her since. Anything else you have heard is incorrect. I turned off comments. I went to bed. When I woke up, the post had been shared 87 times within my extended network. By the end of the day, the Facebook comments on Sophie's weeping post had quietly disappeared. The aunt who said I thought I was better than everyone sent me a private message saying she didn't know the whole story and was so sorry, honey. I didn't reply to that one either. I think she'd expected me to forgive her instantly, which is the thing people who hurt you always expect. The criminal case took 11 months to move through the system. I'm telling you this part faster than I lived it. I lived it slowly. There were depositions. There was a plea negotiation. My mother's lawyer, who was paid for by my father, liquidating part of his 401k, tried to argue that this was a family financial misunderstanding and that prosecuting it was excessive. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s named Diane Velasquez, looked at the documentation and said, on the record, that she had rarely seen a case where the perpetrator had so clearly intended the victim to be the one to pay. My mother pled guilty to identity theft in the second degree. She received 18 months of probation, mandatory restitution, and was barred from any financial account in my name for the rest of her life. The restitution payments come out of my parents' joint account automatically. They will be paying me back at $412 a month until I am 38 years old. I do not need the money. I am not going to refuse it. My father went silent for the first 6 months. Then, around month 8, he sent me a long email. He said he understood why I had done what I did. He said he had not been a good father, that he had let my mother run roughshod over everyone, that he had been a coward. He said he was not asking for a relationship right now. He was asking only that, when I was ready, I let him try. I read that email 4 times. I have not responded yet. I might someday. He is not the same as her. But he was there. He was always there, watching, and he never once stopped it. Sophie has not contacted me in over a year. I have heard, through a cousin I still talk to, that she is living in Florida now with a different boyfriend, and that she has started a podcast about narcissistic family dynamics. She apparently talks about me on the podcast. I have not listened. My mother has tried to contact me twice. The first time was through a card she sent to my office, which my paralegal intercepted and shredded without my reading it, on my standing instructions. The second time was through a mutual friend at her church, who messaged me on LinkedIn to say that Linda was really suffering, and would I please consider reaching out at Christmas. I blocked the church friend. I want to tell you something about that, about the people who come to you on behalf of the person who hurt you and ask you to be smaller about it, to move on, to consider her feelings. They will tell you that holding the line makes you cold. They will tell you that real love forgives. They will tell you that one day you will regret this when she is gone. I want to say very clearly that I will not regret this. What I would have regretted is the version of my life where I paid the $80,000 quietly, where I let her keep my signature in her drawer, where I went to that wedding in Galena in the $400 dress and smiled in the photographs, and where 2 years later, or 5 years later, or 10 years later, she did it again. Because that's the thing they never put in the comments section. People who do this once do not do this once. They do it the first time and they watch what happens. And what happens determines the second time and the third time and every time after. I made it not worth it for her. I want to tell you the other thing too. The part that doesn't fit on a thumbnail. 3 weeks ago, I made partner. 5.5 years ahead of the usual track at my firm. The partnership vote was unanimous. My name is on the letterhead now, on the door of an office on the 34th floor, with a view of the lake that, on good days, makes me forget I'm at work. The night the vote came down, Janelle took me to a bar 2 blocks from the office and bought me a martini that cost $26. She held up her glass and she said, "To the cleanest case I've ever seen." I cried then. Just a little. Mostly because I realized that the woman across from me had been, for the past 2 years, the closest thing to a mother I had in my life. Not a replacement, just a person who watched me decide what I was worth and didn't try to talk me out of it. I drove home that night with the windows down, even though it was March in Chicago and freezing, because I needed the air. I sat in my parking garage for a minute before I went up to my condo, the same parking garage where 18 months earlier I had read a text from my mother with a protein bar in my mouth. Different garage, technically. Different building. But the same kind of fluorescent light, the same kind of quiet. I thought about the version of me who had sat in a car like that, frozen, trying to figure out what to do. I thought about how she had not known yet that she was capable of any of what came next. I thought about how, for most of my life, I had believed that being a good daughter meant absorbing whatever was sent my way, that love was supposed to cost you, that family was the one place you weren't allowed to call the police. I had been wrong about all of that. I did not lose a family that night in March. I had not had a family for a long time before that. What I had was a hostage situation with good wallpaper. What I lost was the wallpaper. If you are sitting somewhere reading this and your phone is on the table next to you, and there is a message on it from someone who shares your blood and your last name, and the message is asking you to be smaller, to be quieter, to absorb the next thing they want to do to you, I want you to know something. You are allowed to put the phone face down. You are allowed to call a lawyer. You are allowed to file the report. You are allowed to mean it when you do. The people who tell you that family forgives everything are almost always the people who have something to gain from your forgiveness. I protect what's mine now. My money. My name. My credit. My peace. My quiet apartment with the lake in the distance. The job I built with my own hands while my mother was telling her church group that the family had caught a break. It was never the family. It was me. It was always me. And the next time someone sends me a text with a kissing face emoji asking me to pay for a problem I didn't make, I will not freeze. I will not eat a protein bar in a parking garage and stare at the concrete and wonder what kind of daughter I am. I will know exactly what kind of daughter I am. I will be the daughter who said no, and meant it, and made it stick. Looking back now, more than a year after I sat in that parking garage with a protein bar in my mouth, I understand something I didn't understand then. What my mother Linda did to me was not the beginning. It was the test. She had been testing me my whole life, in small ways and bigger ways, watching to see how much I would absorb before I pushed back. The $80,000 loan was just the first time she swung hard enough that I had to either swing back or fall down. I think a lot of us are raised to believe that being good means being soft, that loving your family means letting them take pieces of you, quietly, year after year, and calling it loyalty. I believed that for 31 years. It almost cost me my credit, my home, and the career I had built with my own two hands while my mother was telling her church friends that I owed everyone in that pew a piece of my success. Here is what I have learned. Every choice has a cost, and every cost gets paid by someone. My mother chose to forge my signature. She did not pay that cost. I would have paid it in monthly installments for the next decade, while she went on telling people what a generous family we were. The only way the cost ever returned to her was because I refused to carry it. That is not cruelty. That is arithmetic. I also learned that intelligence is not the same as knowledge. I knew the law. I had known the law for years. What I had to develop that week in March was the wisdom to use what I knew on someone I loved. Knowledge sits on a shelf. Wisdom moves your hand. The hardest part of growing up was not learning new things. It was being willing to apply the things I already knew to people who had counted on me never doing it. And strength. People think strength looks like yelling. It does not. The strongest thing I ever did was send one short text my friend Janelle dictated to me, and then turn my phone face down on the coffee table and then go to bed. Strength is the quiet decision, made alone at night, that you are not going to spend the rest of your life being eaten alive by people who share your last name. If you take anything from my story, take this. The people who tell you that family forgives everything are almost always the people who need your forgiveness to keep doing what they are doing. Real love does not require you to be smaller. Real love does not arrive with a kissing face emoji attached to a financial crime. You are allowed to protect what you built. You are allowed to mean it when you say no. And the daughter or son or sister or friend who says no and makes it stick is not the one who broke the family. They are the one who finally told the truth about what the family already was. I sleep well now. That is not nothing. That is everything.